Well, hello everyone, Texie88 here and welcome to another review. And now we're taking a look at Oh No, More Lemmings. Released by Psygnosis in 1991, and this is the Commodore Amiga version. Now, it's important to stress that Oh No, More Lemmings is not the sequel to Lemmings. It is effectively a data disc containing more Lemmings with exactly the same kind of gameplay, but different levels. And you've got 5 different difficulty levels this time. You've got Tame, Crazy, Wild, Wicked, and Havoc. And I believe there are 20 levels in each of the settings this time. Yeah, 100 levels I just saw on the scrolling, and the music's all different this time around. They've gone are the nursery rhymes / traditional tunes / classical tunes that were present in the original. Got, from what I can make out, the music was specifically created for this. Now, Oh No More Lemmings was available as a standalone game and as a data disc that required the original Lemmings, at least on the Amiga version. So yeah, if you the data disc version was slightly cheaper than the standard standalone edition. So as you can see, it's all looking quite familiar now. You've got a preview at the top of the screen of the lemming level you're about to do. You've got the usual number of lemmings, how many you need to save in the level, and the release rate, the minimum it can be, and the amount of time you've got. Got the same sound effect playing when you. You got the same "let's go" and other things. All of that's present in this, and here's one of the new tunes that you can that you get in Oh No More Lemmings. This tune here is actually my favourite of the new ones in this add-on. I'm going to call it add-on because it's not a sequel, and even though it's available as a standalone version, I'm still going to call it add-on because it is that. It's not a sequel. It's effectively more of the same. One thing I am glad that they did in comparison to the first game, though, is that from what I remember, there are never more than 80 lemmings in a level, whereas they could reach as many as 100 in a level in the first Lemmings. Now you might be thinking, but Texie, isn't that a retrograde step? Well, no, not really, because one thing that is kind of irritating about the first Lemmings is that even on the Amiga, if you had more than about 80 to 85 lemmings on the screen at once, the frame rate did noticeably drop. That wouldn't in itself be such a problem, but that timer in the bottom right corner keeps strict time throughout, regardless of regardless of whether or not there are too many lemmings on screen for there to not be frame rate issues. Given that there are some levels later on in that game which have very tight time limits, that is a big problem. So by constraining it to a number that doesn't cause such a noticeable drop in the frame rate, that's actually a good thing. Especially as some of the levels in this, get quite meaty later on. Although one thing is very strange about the Oh No More Lemmings is that the first 20 or 21 levels or so are really easy. I mean, they're really easy. I mean, you're not gonna sweat doing them. They're that easy. And this game does still have the same problem as the original Lemmings, in that if you want to do a precision move and you've got a whole big clump of lemmings wandering about, it can be extremely hard to single out a lemming that's going in the direction you want it to. Such as for particularly for things like Builder, Basher and Miner, which it does matter whether or not a lemming is facing left or right. When it comes to diggers, it can matter if you want to be able to dig or to bash or mine left or right whilst one is digging, because it will bash or mine in the direction that the lemming was facing prior to being turned into a digger, whenever that is the case. Yeah, so you don't so much get a difficulty curve in this as say the tame levels all being really easy, and then suddenly you're faced with a pretty hard level. I believe it's the second level of the crazy, where you'll suddenly find yourself suddenly panicking. But I do quite like the new graphics in this version. And I do like the new style of exit doors as well. I mean, everything still plays just as well as it did before, which is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because if you did eventually complete Lemmings and were thirsty for more, then Oh No More Lemmings both is and isn't the response to your prayers. I mean, you're getting 100 extra one-player levels, and as you saw, there was still a two-player option on the main menu screen earlier. That requires 2 mice and obviously 2 people. And I do still quite like the music that's in this in Oh No More Lemmings. I don't think it's quite. It's not. For the most part, it's not quite as jaunty as what you got in the first game, and whether or not the lack of familiar tunes, fairy tales and nursery rhymes and sort of classical themes and the like, whether or not you miss those is obviously going to be down to personal taste, because musical taste in particular is one of those where opinions can vary so widely from one person to the next. You will either love the new tunes or not be quite so enthralled by them as you were with the tunes in the first game, or you may out and out loathe them. But as you saw on the main menu section, there's that same option where you could turn off the music if you weren't keen on it. So there's that as well. So it's not like you're forced to listen to it. See, like I was explaining earlier, because the lemming was going right when I first turned into a digger, and when I later changed it into a miner, it's mined to the right. A similar thing would have happened with Basher. Nice. I mean, one thing I will say from past experience of this game, some of the later levels have some slight design issues. For example, that you can sometimes get these pillars that have rounded tops, and I kind of wish that that DMA Design hadn't gone with the rounded tops, because when you dig down on those, they can cause problems, because if you're not smack on top of the middle of them, there'll be a slight overhang. So if you wanted to do to use a climber to climb up that same surface later, they won't be able to climb over the top of it, because the moment they hit that overhang, they're just going to fall back down. Sometimes that can be handy depending on the level. Other times it can be a real pain in the bum. It's entirely dependent on the level, but it is something that shows that it is just one thing that shows there hasn't been quite the same level of care taken in this as there was in the previous game. Who's that lemming? See, we've already gone through all the different tunes, and then they loop. And as in the earlier game, climber and floater permanently affect a lemming. Once climb or float has been set, that lemming's stuck with it for life. After I've done this level, I'll wind up the review, because there's no point going into great detail. I mean, the basic gameplay is the same. It's the same as in the original Lemmings. This is just 100 more levels to satisfy the needs of those who perhaps had completed Lemmings and wanted more of the same. But as I said, this is simply effectively an expansion pack, and is not an actual sequel. Lemmings 2: The Tribes, which came out a few years later, is the actual sequel to this. So that's Oh No, More Lemmings for the Commodore Amiga. It's one of those love-hate relationship type things. I mean, graphics, they're still as cutesy as ever, and I do quite like the different styles to make it look a bit different from its predecessor. Animation is as lovely as it ever was, and it's still amazing just how much character these little critters have, considering how small the sprites are. Sound, well, as I said, whether or not you like the all new music composed for this game is a matter of personal taste. That tune you've just heard, as I said, is my favourite out of all of them. There aren't as many tunes in this as there are in the original Lemmings, and there isn't the familiarity of the different nursery rhymes / traditional / folk / classical tunes in this that there was in the original Lemmings. And the fact that there aren't so many tunes means it won't be all that long before the tunes start to loop round again. And the sound effects are exactly the same as before, and work exactly the same, and are just as good as they were before, just as cute as they were before. So, gameplay. Well, the difficulty cliff issue that I mentioned earlier is something I can't just ignore. I mean, the tame levels are ridiculously easy. And now I don't know whether that was deliberate in order to ease people who had finished Lemmings or back into the fray before the meaty stuff. But the problem is, the meaty stuff, when it does arrives very suddenly. It's not nearly as gradual a difficulty curve as it is in the first game. I mean, yes, there were some occasional Phillips in the higher difficulty levels, which in some ways is a bit of a respite from having a whole slew of really tough ones, but that's not really the case so much in Oh No, More Lemmings. And the fact that it can suddenly get hard from the second level in the crazy difficulty setting, which, as you saw when I cycled through the 5 different difficulty settings on that menu screen earlier, is only the second set of difficulty level. So that could come as quite a shock, quite understandably. And there's also those slight level design issues, like the pillar thing I mentioned, and the problems associated with using the different skills to manipulate the scenery. There hasn't been quite the same level of care taken in the level design as there is in the original Lemmings. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is still possible to complete Oh No, More Lemmings. It can be done, but it seems to be more reliant on luck than even the original Lemmings, especially with those aforementioned level design flaws. And there's also the problem that if you were to buy the data disc version, it was only about £5 less expensive than the standalone version, which was about £25.99. So it would be about £20.99 or £19.99, depending on where you went. For a data disc, especially as you're not getting as many levels in this as you did in the first game. I mean, first game you had 120 one-player levels. Here there are only 100. So having to pay that much for the data disc version that requires the original Lemmings, that price is a bit steep. So as a result, I'm going to give Oh No, More Lemmings on the Amiga 7 out of 10. More of the same, but the data disc version in particular is quite expensive, and even the standalone version is a bit expensive considering you get fewer levels than previously, and the basic game engine would have already been done in the first game. So to charge as much for the standalone version of Oh No, More Lemmings as was charged for the original Lemmings, it's a bit cheeky, really, especially with the other problems I mentioned. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Catch you on another one soon. Texie88 out.